our COVID-19 Financial Oversight Committee meeting, and we do have guests. Most of them have been here before, or at least represent organizations that have been here before, so probably for the sake of time, we will forego introductions, but as we call on them to speak, if you will, just introduce yourselves and which organization. Again, based on last week's committee meeting, we did ask folks from Pathway Lending, Nashville Business Incubation Center, Nashville Entrepreneur Center, Conexion, and our Nashville Area Chamber to join us. You have received the proposals for all of them, including some updated proposals, which we did provide hard copies just so you had them at your fingertips. And really, we'll just go ahead and open up our meeting today with conversation, as we are kind of in week 3 of our specific conversations around small business. So we do have our folks here for questions, if there are questions on the proposals, or just open the floor for comments. I was going to say, this crowd's never quiet.
Mary Jo, can we have our guests introduce themselves real quick?
Yes, absolutely. We'll just start on this side of the room. Angela, if you don't mind to start.
Angela Crane Jones. I'm the CEO of Nashville Business Incubation Center.
Good afternoon. Hank Helton, Executive Vice President and Founder at Pathway Lending.
I'm Leslie Hayes with Pathway Lending, SVP of Education.
Good afternoon. John Murdoch, COO of the Nashville Entrepreneur Center.
Hello, everyone. Stephanie Coleman, Chief Growth Officer at the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Carlett, the Chief Policy Officer at the Nashville Area Chamber.
And Marta Silva with Conexion Americas.
And also with Conexion Americas, I'm Jose Gonzalez.
Fantastic. Thank you all for being here today. We appreciate your time and your thoughtful proposals about how we can help our small businesses here in Davidson County.
Question for Pathway Lending. I'm just trying to get a sense of how much money you all would need to be able to go through just for the infrastructure. How much do you all plan for grants or loans for businesses, not your infrastructure? We see the 200,000, but I wanted to see what it was beyond that.
Right. So on the access to capital piece, what we proposed is kind of a two-pronged system. One would be actual grants. The other would be actual loans structured somewhat similar to what we have had success with in Memphis and what Gwinnett County, Georgia is actually having some success with one of our peer CDFIs called Access to Capital for Entrepreneurs, or ACE, down in Georgia. So on the grant side, we would be looking at about $2 million for capital ask. That would be about, we're anticipating about $10,000 per business. That could go up or down depending on the business's needs, which would get us to about 200 businesses. On the access to capital mezz debt piece, or the debt side, $2.5 million. We're anticipating those loans would be about $40,000 to $50,000 per business. That would get us to somewhere around 75 to 100 businesses that would receive loans. These products could also be combined together to what we call a sidecar type of environment, where we could actually make a grant and a loan to one business. So, and that's, we've had some effective products with that in Memphis, and would like to be able to do that here as well. So we could put the $10,000 of immediate grant dollars, which would be obviously a total equity injection into the company on their balance sheet, and then we could come in with the patient debt piece on the mezz side. That would be a very almost what I call dequity or equity-looking debt instrument on their balance sheet to give them that patient capital to grow and continue to emerge through as we recover in our economy. So, but the total ask would be $4.5 million, 2.5 for loans and 2.5.
So can I say it would be 4.7 also for the infrastructure? Okay.
With those dollars stacked that way, we have to exhaust our dollars by December 30th of this year. Can we use our money for loans?
Yes.
Okay.
So we did have a update from a legal perspective that we would be making actually a grant to Pathway Lending with no repayment to us. They would have to expend the funds by December 30th to meet the expenditure requirement by that date. But the payback of the loans to them would not be a payback to us, so therefore there would be no return to the Treasury.
Okay. And then under that, we make the grant to you, you make the loans to others, they'll get the loans repaid over X period of time. What do you do with the funds when they're repaid?
Typically, and in this case specifically, it becomes a loan fund in perpetuity. Everything we do is a revolving loan fund structure. So the money that comes back to us goes back into the loan fund to go help other businesses. So we're really setting up a perpetual, sustainable pool of capital.
Thank you.
We're talking about. From an infrastructure perspective, we're already doing this. So for lack of a better term, we're shovel ready and ready to go. So on the grant and on the loan side.
For the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, for your total funding necessary, is that for infrastructure or is that for actual payment and support to businesses? I don't even know who I'm supposed to be looking at.
Yeah, great question. And so on our revised submission, based on feedback that we'd gotten from our prior two proposals, we adjusted it to be entirely based on the infrastructure or services support necessary to deliver to the entrepreneurs and uncoupled the activity of actually giving out grants to entrepreneurs in this current function, feeling like one of the best ways for us to work with our ecosystem is to leave that activity to Pathways and for us to focus more exclusively on how can we help the entrepreneurs with what we do best.
So you're the front door to that. Got
Front
it.
door to
You're
Pathways and others, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And as far as what you're ready to hit the ground running doing and get this, very, very quickly, what is a reasonable number here? I mean, we're going from up to 100 to 5,000 businesses. What's something that's reasonable within a very expedited time frame, because time is of the essence, obviously?
So reasonable is in like how many companies could I onboard tomorrow?
Yes.
So we could onboard tomorrow up to about 500 businesses. We would then need to be, the way that we tier our kind of process when we onboard a program is that we'd be able to build out the capacity on the back end quickly while we onboarded teams with that activity. So we could pretty much flip the switch and be up to the 500 teams or businesses, and then we would need to have more resources to be able to intake the 1,000, 2,500, or 5,000. But all of those we could be prepared to onboard within a month. So every business could see that the opportunity was there and apply for it within the next 30 days, and we'd be able to triage them quickly.
Okay. My original thought as far as everyone working together, I like to keep it simple, and my original thought was, let's have one group be the money group. There's one group that's going to be handling money, and the other groups are going to handle support, resources, training, that type of stuff. After talking to Council Lady Sepulveda, I do think there probably is a good need to divide that out, because there are certain outreach specialties that, for example, Conexion is going to be able to communicate. They're meeting businesses where they are, and that's their whole thing. Do the different businesses have the ability to communicate with each other to prevent duplication? So for example, if Pathways has given a grant or a loan or a combination to Company A, and Company A also goes to Conexion, do you guys have the ability to communicate to each other to not duplicate those dollars? Does that, you know what I mean?
Jose and Marta, please chime in, but since we're talking about how we could communicate, I do think that there is some infrastructure that we would need to develop around that, but I don't think that there would be a heavy lift. Currently, right now, looking for a portal. I think the EC would be a good opportunity to be able to kind of manage that aspect of it. So I would assume that we would set up some sort of a process where, we all communicate frequently about who's getting what and share information primarily with one another to make sure we're not, one, duplicating services, and to make sure we're leveraging the dollars as effectively as we could.
Right, okay. Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I just would add, right, that today that infrastructure is not in place from the perspective of Conexión, because the scope is very limited in terms of number of businesses, it would be very simple to communicate and to do that. You know, I hear in other spaces of this money, the charity tracker as a portal that's being used for other things. I don't know if that's a possibility to use it, but if not, really, it's at least from our perspective, because it's a limited number of businesses that we would commit to serving between now and then, it would be very simple to prevent the duplication.
Okay. Sure.
So and just on kind of what Jose has said too, the National Entrepreneur Center, with the activity we already do, tracking where entrepreneurs are going and what they're asking for and what they need and seeing what resources they connect with, it naturally aligns with stuff that we've already done. We just haven't done this specific activity with our infrastructure. So we could be a neutral party doing this pretty quick. Like,
All right, that's perfect. You know, I want to reiterate, I said this last week, but I want to reiterate how important this is for our community, these dollars, and the extreme negative domino effect that multiple businesses going out of business, going extinct, will fall is unbelievably, you know, we're talking about, obviously, people don't have a place to go back to work to. The other businesses that support these particular businesses are losing revenue. Commercial real estate flooding the market. I mean, it's just, it touches every single thing. So, and it's so important to do this in a very timely fashion, because time is of the essence is truly an understatement. And so I've looked at what other cities have done, and I tried to pick cities that were similar in size and similar in soul, for lack of a better term. And so I looked at Atlanta and I looked at Austin, Texas. Austin, Texas is huge, by the way. I had no idea it was that big. But Atlanta has allotted $15 million for loans. Austin has allotted $16.5 million for grants, and they all have different, you know, for companies up to a certain revenue, annual revenue, that type of thing. Greensboro, North Carolina allotted $20 million. And I know we have some things to work out, but I kind of want to think about the scope of how much money do we have left to allocate out of our CARES Act monies, and how much are we thinking that we're going to put towards that. I would move that we do anywhere from $8 to $10 million, with at least 20% of that earmarked for our music and arts industries. So I kind of wanted to start that conversation to see where everybody's head is as far as amounts. And then once we start from that big picture, figuring out, you know, what businesses are we looking at? Is it businesses $5 million and less in annual revenue with a certain number of employees? How do they apply? We can figure all that out, but I want to start at the top first, if nobody is objecting to that.
Actually, I have taken the liberty of putting together a framework based on all of the discussions that we've had over the past few weeks, and based on the proposals that we've received from our community partners. And I would move that we look at a $3 million budget, just because of our lack of resources and opportunities for larger businesses to get relief through the state Tennessee Business Program, which has about $170 million left for mid-size and larger business relief. And we focus on more smaller relief, small business and micro businesses and minority and women-owned small businesses that, as a result of what came out of our fair share study that was conducted. So if we talk about what kind of relief we are looking at offering over the past few weeks, there's been a common theme of three priorities of relief that is needed. Consultation services and assistance, business, technical, and sustainability program grant support, and direct grants for small, micro, and minority and women-owned businesses. So if we look at those three priority areas, what do we categorize our businesses to serve? And that's narrowing in, because we have such a limited amount of funds, narrowing in on businesses that are small, micro, and minority and women-owned, those that have been left out of other federal and state programs. So small businesses, and I looked on the Metro government website for what they qualify as small businesses, looked up, researched micro businesses, et cetera. Small businesses are classified as companies with annual sales and assets valued at $1 million or less per year with fewer than 20 employees. Micro businesses, companies with annual sales and assets valued at $250,000 or less per year with fewer than 5 employees, including the owner. Minority and women-owned businesses identified in our Fair Share business needs assessment that were left out of PPP, EIDL, or other state, or received very little, or $1,000 or less of that money from other state and federal grant programs. So as we're looking at criteria and eligibility for these three business categories that we're serving, small business, micro businesses, minority and women-owned businesses, there are criteria and eligibility that are also outlined in the Metro Small Business Guidelines. Businesses that have existed as a legal business entity for a minimum of 1 year, performing independently and satisfactorily and achieving a minimum of $35,000 in sales income during the previous tax year and supported by tax documentation, not be owned, controlled, or directed by individuals or groups of individuals who own, control, or direct a large business involved in the same category of work, didn't receive PPEIDL or other grants or receive $1,000 or less in loans and grants, was shut down as a result of local health orders and has not been cited for violating those health orders. So those are just 4 criteria eligibility benchmarks that we discussed, and we can add to that, but over the course of a few weeks, that's what we discussed. And then finally, in working with our partners, I agree with Councilwoman Sepulveda that it is not feasible to have one agency direct all of these services, because not one agency does all of this. So we need to work with our individual partners that are here today that have submitted proposals. I'm suggesting or motioning that out of that $3 million that we designate for small business relief, that we designate the Entrepreneur Center submitted a proposal for business technical assistance and sustainability grants for small and micro businesses, which is the population of businesses primarily that they serve, offering education classes and webinars for $200,000. The Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce offering virtual education platform for small and micro businesses, which is primarily the business population that they serve, $200,000. Pathway Lending, administrate direct grants to eligible small and micro businesses, which again, primarily the population that they serve, $1.2 million. Conexion Americas, offering business technical assistance grants and direct grants to minority and women-owned businesses, offering Spanish language technical assistance, $200,000. And the Nashville Business Incubation Center, offering business technical assistance grants and direct grants to minority and women-owned small businesses, the population that they primarily serve, offering one-on-one direct services, including e-commerce, website capability, marketing strategy development, accounting, and legal support for $1.2 million. And those totals add up to $3 million. My question today is, to each of the organizations is, would you, according to your proposals and according to what I'm proposing today, is that feasible for you to do? And how many individuals could you serve, or could you potentially serve with that distribution?
If you guys will raise your hand, that way I can turn your mic on.
Because I think I started with the Entrepreneur Center for $200,000 in your proposal.
So with about the $200,000, if we focused on the delivery of the services that we outlined and spent the funds in that manner, we could serve about 250, just shy of that, entrepreneurs.
Okay, from Conexión Américas, it would be direct support, direct financial support, we would serve between 30 and 50. And on the technical assistance piece, between 75 and 100. Maybe more. A lot of that will be virtual, and of course, in these days, it could be hundreds, but easily between 75 and 100.
Now, in your proposal, you also suggested direct grants.
Right.
So that's
Correct. That's the
50.
that's the 30 to 50.
Okay.
Mhm. For very specific criteria. Yeah.
As far as the incubation center, just to be clear, are you, because I initially asked for more for grants as well as one-to-one. So are you still,
Well,
you suggested now one-to-one and grants?
1.2 million, including technical assistance and direct grants.
So then for us, it would average between, 150 to 200. That just depends on the services, as we will do an assessment to assess where the company is, within their journey.
And is that for the technical assistance?
Yes.
And what about the grant?
Again, the grants would be in that same amount. Because for us, our thought process is not to give $10,000 to someone that's, a single member LLC or a sole prop, and their revenue is $90,000 versus someone that may come in and has $300,000 or $400,000 and they need additional dollars. But we have a rubric.
So what would be the average grant amount based on your current programs, grant programs? You mentioned at one of our previous meetings, the Frisk Foundation had given you $150 for business relief support. So based on what you're already doing, what would be the average grant size?
About $3,700, $3,750.
Thank you.
From the Nashville Chamber perspective, just based on what our service was from March until June, we served about 3,700 businesses through our virtual programs. We would anticipate about that same number, probably a little more, so about 4,000. And what we would do is also identify specific needs of businesses, triage those, and then direct them to our partner organizations to help them with more complex needs.
And then from Pathway Lending's perspective, a little clarification. So on the 1.2 million as just proposed, would that be just for grants to businesses, or would that include the technical assistance piece as well? Just straight grants? So based upon our proposal, we were anticipating about $10,000 per business. So that'd get us to about 120 to 150 businesses, or just strictly for grant.
I had a question. I wanted to thank everybody for the proposals. They were very well put together. One thing that I've wrestled with in looking at the proposals and just thinking through this is that I think that we ought to be prioritizing these funds to go to businesses that we know suffered a pretty substantial hit from the virus. And in looking at the proposals and seeing like different ideals for grant assistance and technical assistance, I think that's a good way to balance helping businesses with the short term and long term. But my question is, and I didn't see a lot of this, how do we filter through applicants to make sure that what we're doing is to
help businesses that have been directly impacted and steering away from picking winners and losers in the marketplace.
I can offer from our perspective how we're thinking about this. Because it's a short period of time and it's not a lot of money, in our communities, in the refugee and immigrant communities, food establishments are clearly impacted, right? And so we would focus the majority of our direct assistance to those who get to increase or improve their ability to stay open. The majority of the businesses owned by refugees and immigrants, especially in the South Corridor, do not have the technology infrastructure, for example, to be connected to the online platforms, DoorDash or Uber Eats or what have you, right? Many of them don't even have the ability to take credit cards. And so the way we've thought about it is, what is the most impactful thing that they can do to be able to increase their sales in a short period of time? And so that is something that we feel we can deploy rapidly and have the leverage this few dollars in a way that hopefully in December they're up and running. We have 25 of them that don't have that capability today. That's an example of how we're thinking about this, because we cannot solve everybody's problem. There's just no way. There's no time. There's not enough money. And so realistically, that's what we think we can do in our little space.
Similarly, we know that not every industry has been impacted the same way. So we would be focusing our attention on those industries that we know have been hardest hit. Obviously, retail, hospitality are two of those, the arts, live events, music, et cetera. And also the small minority and women-owned businesses who we've seen through data have not been able to take as much advantage of some of the federal grants and loans through the PPP. So those would be our primary areas of focus.
And at NBIC, I'm augmenting what has already been stated. Our rubric is designed around restaurants, event and hospitality, and professional services. Those are ones that we felt are directly affected due to the shutdown that was, no fault of their own, that had to close.
And then from Pathway Lending's perspective, obviously food and beverage, hospitality, entertainment, in industries that have been adversely impacted, but primarily as a nonprofit community development financial institution that's mission-driven, we've got a very intense focus on minority-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and the small businesses that didn't have access to the PPP or the EIDL or other resources that were available. And if you look at the $2 million we've already put on the street in this space, and the loans that we've already made to 64 businesses, 39% of those were to minority-owned, 31% African-American, 6% were to Latinx businesses, 44% were to women-owned businesses, and just about 3 to 4% were to veteran-owned businesses. So in addition to the industry space, we would have a specific focus on the demographic or the socioeconomic space as well.
Okay. So I appreciate Councilor Gamble's work on this. I've done some of my own work with some different criteria. There's a couple of things that I would change. I would make these allocations more robust. I think that $3 million is anemic when it comes to the unbelievable need that we have. And I wanted to ask, first of all, when you said PPE, I don't want to, PPP, all these Ps. I don't want to take away eligibility from someone because they've received PPP before, but it does need to be taken into account, is my first question. And are we on the same page on that? No?
Can I flag something real quick? There is no list if a business received less than $150,000 of PPP. Like, the federal government didn't keep it. No one has that. And as far as the state list for businesses, they're not going to give us that either because it's text information. So that's those two things we're going to have. It's never going to be.
So we would have to rely on those businesses to be honest about what they've received. Again, to me, because there's no way to, I would want to maybe take that part out of it. If they're going to be honest, obviously, if they've received, if their whole need is this and they've already received X, then let's take it into account, but not to remove eligibility. So as I was looking through this, as far as just allocations, and I think we're, I guess, on the same page to use multiple agencies, also for, for the different resources that they provide their, with their outreach, but also money. I would say for the chamber, 200,000, I agree with that. The Entrepreneur Center, I would go to 600,000. Conexion Americas, I would do the 200,000 they asked for. Nashville Incubation Center, the 1.3, it's 1.287, whatever, but 1.3. And with Pathway, I think that's going to be the bulk of loans, grants, however we structure it. I would go to $5.5 million for them, in addition to the 200 that they need for their infrastructure, for a total of $8 million.
If I could just go back to something that the three council ladies worked on. Earlier, you said we should use one umbrella agency, one triage agency, and then someone said it was either or, no, we should use multiple. I think we should use both. I do think we need one front door, and I would suggest, and I think they're the most capable, using the chamber as the triage unit, where it comes in and then goes out to the organizations with us. And I think we set 2 levels of dollars, whether we're at 3 or 8 or 10 million, X identified for each agency, and then a blanket amount above that, then to assign down, because there's some duplication in resource support that I think could be allocated a little differently. And from my ignorant knowledge, if you can use those together, everyone in the room works pretty well together already. And I think this would heighten it for the strength of those we're trying to service. So if we put everything through, and I'm just saying the chamber right now because I'm looking at you, but everything went into the chamber and then was paired with the proper organization sitting here right now, I think is the best way to do it. It's not either or, but there is too much duplication that I think we're going to be lost. And the chamber already works with about 4,000 companies over the past few months in this area. They're the easiest ones to scale up or scale down while assigning. So I'm not trying to pick one over the other, but I do think we should use one gateway and then multiple agencies to service it. Take the dollars and split it, probably 60% to individual agencies, 40% to be assigned later as it's agreed. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but the combination, I think, has to be there.
Well, first, let me respond to Council Lady Johnston. So, I agree. I wish we had $8 and $10 million to distribute, but as we were reminded over previous times, over the weeks, we are looking at about $17 million left realistically. Well, we have $65 million left, and then, of course, we have the $48 million in hazard pay overtime that has already been spent that we need to address, which would bring us down to $17 million. And we haven't even...
Correct.
Okay.
We've got $33 million left.
Right, so $33 million, okay, thank you. Well, good, that's great, because I was thinking we were less 17 million. Okay, so $33 million, and we have not looked at, we were talking about fourth quarter reserves. We haven't even looked at departments yet. And so, and because there's still $170 million in the state that businesses like the music venue alliances and other, the Nashville Zoo, we have $150 million that the state has in nonprofit funding that the Nashville Zoo and some of the nonprofits would qualify for. Because they have more eligibility or access to those dollars, I'm suggesting that we narrow our focus on businesses here locally that either don't qualify for that state money or have or been left out for whatever reason according to the data. And so that's where I get the $3 million as a starting point. I mean, if things change and we're able to bring more into that pot, I'm all for it. But looking at the budget now and looking at the needs that we haven't even started to tackle, not wanting to spend that much money in this area starting out.
Yeah.
To Steve's point about duplication, I think in the proposals, and I have worked with just about every organization here, and their work is great in serving our community. The only problem I have with designated one agency is that will still cause disparities in what we're trying to address. The Nashville Chamber is great in what it does, but not all of these businesses are members of the chamber. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to limit businesses that need help but don't have a relationship or don't understand the chamber to have to go to the chamber or to feel that, because that'll be limiting for them. So I like the idea of partnering with each organization to address a specific need. And what I outlined in the framework I'm suggesting is that to avoid that kind of duplication is to be specific in what areas each agency will provide and to what specific business group, as a way to avoid duplication, as a way to minimize disparities and to have equity in what we're doing. So that would be my only concern with having a one agency be a hub and direct other agencies. I think we would be more equitable if we work with each individual agency, designate the specific business category and service that they'll provide to that population and designate funds in that way.
I think it's
Yeah, sorry. No one sees me back here. I'm not going to speak to the equity aspect of it because Councilwoman Gamble touched on what I wanted to say. I do want to know if Representative Love has an update from the state, especially if we have those independent music venues who are potentially closing next month. And so if the state has something planned in these next couple of weeks, then that could be helpful. But if not, I do think that we do need to step in.
I think my concern about the state's plans may be the speed at which the plans will be carried out, because we are just at the point where the nonprofits who applied for their portion of the $150 million will be getting funded from the state. And I will lift up, I think what I said, I guess maybe a month ago, when we were first dealing with the issue of rent and mortgage, is that Metro Council is moving faster in approving and distributing the funds. Unfortunately, the state is moving as fast as it can, but the state is dealing with broadband, dealing with businesses, and a second round of that possibly, working out our situation with the nonprofits and that $150 million and the local government's $115. And so I think that the unfortunate situation we're in is that if we have venues that are going to be closing next week, the question that I would ask is, how fast could this particular resolution be funded? If it's voted on today, does it go back up Tuesday or resolution? And then when does the funding occur? And maybe looking at even just a stopgap measure. Because like you, I would hate for us to expend $2 million when there's going to be a pot of $5 million coming from the state. But then if we don't expend $1 million, then there won't be a business left to apply for the $5 million. And that's the quandary that we're in. It's just a delay, and it's not intentional. I think it's just the process, because I think even the small businesses that receive money from the initial $200 million we set aside, some of them are just getting their money. I'm sorry about that. The process has just been so unfortunately slow. I hope that answers.
That does, and that was my concern, that we wouldn't be seeing any state money come in quick enough. And so I do think that this should be a separate resolution, but again, that would be up to the body. And I think that it should be 2 million.
A separate resolution for like emergency, right now you're gonna close next month, so we wanna help you? Yeah, I agree with that. I wanted to speak to what you had said before about working. I think it's gonna be kind of a blend. I think we're all gonna be working together in some aspect. I would say that I think that the Nashville Entrepreneur Center is probably better equipped to be that front door, if there is a front door. And so that's the only thing that I would disagree with. I agree with the thought, just not necessarily that the chamber would be that, and that's not what their, I don't think anyway, was their proposal. I think Entrepreneur Center was sort of taking on that, you know, like I'm saying, the front door. I'm gonna double down on my my $8 million allocation. I think, you know, we, regardless of what the state is going to do in a timely fashion, this, that, and the other, you know, in the emergency, 2 million, if that's what we want to do, would come out of that 8 million. So a total allocation of 8. But I just think what I don't want to do is too little. And then what have we done? You know, it's these dollars that we're giving, that we are allocating toward support for small businesses is, and no offense to the departmental requests, wish lists, so much more important to support our small businesses versus some of the things that I'm seeing on these wish list requests from departments. And I think we will get to that, and there will be part of it, because I think there's some very important things in here. But a $38.4 million overall wish list, that's not going to happen. And again, the importance level of keeping these businesses' doors open is just monumental. It will take decades for this city to come back if we have the existential crisis that we are running head on into. It has to happen quickly. It has to be robust. It has to be coordinated. And it needs to, again, I'm doubling down on my 8 million.
So from a mechanics perspective, I did want to point out, we have our Nashville area chamber that we partner with. We also do partner with our 2 of our Hispanic Nashville chambers, Black Chamber and LGBTQ chamber. And I think there's an idea that these businesses probably have an affiliation with one of those, perhaps, and that those organizations could be the ones to make sure that the businesses know about NBIC, and that they know about NEC, and that they know about Pathway, and they know about Conexión. So I think there's still some, if we want to use front door, I mean, I think of it more as though they are the marketing, and they are the hand that is going to bring them to the network. And I've kind of started to just refer to the 4 partners, Conexión, Pathway, NBIC, and NEC, as that network. And that we want to make sure that these businesses find their way into the network. And each of those individual organizations have a bit of a pipeline and have a target audience that they're used to working with. And it seems as though everybody fits into one of those organizations and would at least be led to one of those organizations through the chambers. So we do have partnerships with all of those chambers to help lead folks into that network.
I have just a couple of thoughts, and appreciate all the comments and specific proposals. You know, I kind of always want to come up with sort of the most generous plan we can, but also holding some reserve to see how it's working. When I look at all these proposals, one of the things that catches my eye is the number of businesses that can be served quickly. Because the way I feel about this is these businesses are now in a, they were in a crisis mode in April, but they're really in a crisis mode now because there's no end in sight. So what we want to do, I think, is leverage the organizations that we're working with to get as much done as quickly as we can. And so when I look at specifics, I think the number may be somewhere in between the two proposals. But when I look at specifics, I look at the Entrepreneur Center's proposal, the number of businesses they can serve for $750,000 or $900,000 is a huge number compared to what some of the other organizations can serve. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm advocating for reducing the others. I'm not. I just think in terms of looking at what maybe an incremental additional amount might do, that could be very helpful. So I would suggest that we kind of revisit that on the Entrepreneur Center standpoint, simply because of what they said. And then in terms of the NBIC, I guess that number, I wanted to make sure I understood that the number is for the management and technical assessment. I know that there was a reference to a 6-month roadmap program that would be done. I guess I just wanted to get a little bit more clarification in terms of serving the 100 and I think it was, I don't have my reading glasses on, but it was 150 to 200 organizations. Just how quickly will programs be implemented? Because what we don't want to do is get into a situation where we think we've provided immediate assistance, but the ramp-up time is quite long.
So at the Incubation Center, all our programs are ongoing. We don't have to develop anything. Everything's already in place. We already have 13 of our strategic partners that we work on a regular basis. We would, if we go beyond the 150 we see our demand, then we would have to bring in 4 other individuals that we would need from an IT perspective. So for us, we can ramp up in 3 weeks. I already have a timeline in place with classes starting as well as the one-to-one assistance. And the reason why our numbers are not in the hundreds, because we're doing deep technical assistance. We're creating a plan, because if it doesn't matter if you're giving $5,000 or $20,000, if they don't have a plan in place, then they're planning to fail. And so the 6 months, it's giving them a plan over time so they know what action steps they need to take versus, some classes or just some one-off items. It would be meeting with them over a 12-week period.
And that's helpful, and I suspect it's not going to be one size fits all in terms of what each business needs. So I think we want to provide the full spectrum of sort of the quick hits versus the more in-depth assessment. But I would just suggest that we do increase the number a little bit above what Council Member Gamble has suggested, just to try to cover the most that we can. I also would suggest that Pathway Lending has a program that would be easy for us to revisit. We could make an initial allocation. It would be very easy for us to supplement that if we felt there was a need for either more technical support or for grants. And so we may want to start off with something more modest, knowing that we can revisit it a month from now or however long after we get our initial reports of how it's going. I think that's something we might want to think about. I think the other thing I wanted to ask Mary Jo is clarification on these other chambers, what their role can be and how can we mobilize them, because I think we want to really get this word out. We need to get the word out. We've talked about it before. There may be money left on the table with the states already. There may be future money left on the table. We want to be able to advise people to tap into any resources that they can. And the more players that we have in this community reaching out to maximum number of people in different communities, letting them know about those resources, I think the better off our small businesses will be.
Yeah, the 5 chambers that I mentioned are all in the FY21 budget. So they are all receiving direct appropriations and are currently under the contract process. So we actually have the flexibility for a program scope of work to actually outline specifically that we could ask in this year of COVID. Our request is really focused on this outreach and communication and marketing to these companies versus what we may have had a program scope for last year. It certainly is a different environment. So we do have that flexibility. Those contracts are not complete.
I know that the reach of the Nashville chambers and the individual chambers, I mean, I think there's like 6 or 7 of them, they have a good reach. I know when I had my business, I was not a member of the chamber. And so what I want to avoid, again, like I said, I think it's going to be a combination of everybody doing their part. I don't want just one front door, though, because I'm walking back what I said before, to keep it simple and have the one front door and then branch from that. That's not reasonable, but just because everybody has their own specific niche and that should be taken advantage of. But, so I think that as far as front door, we could have a double front door. And it'd be the chambers and the Entrepreneur Center, because if I'm not a member of the chamber, that's not where I'm gonna go. And I know there's a lot of businesses that are not a part of that. So I want everyone to have a place where they feel comfortable going and they understand, you know? And I'm sure that the two agencies can work that out, as far as who's doing what, and, you know, to sort of balance that out to make sure that we're reaching as many businesses as we possibly can, regardless of if they're a member or not.
Thank you. So I did have a couple of questions about the tracker and how long you all would think that would take to come online so that we could have some idea. In the previous resolutions that we've passed, we want to come back and revisit at the end of November how these funds have been used. And so, you know, if you don't currently have the tracker in place, how long would it take to put something like that?
And I might clarify, the resolutions actually have biweekly reporting. So it's not even until the end of November. It would be as we're going, we would want, I assume you all would continue to want information as you are working with these companies.
And so that reinforces supporting Councilmember Gamble and being a bit conservative on the front end. And if we see as we tick along that these funds are being utilized quicker than we thought, then perhaps we move to invest additional funds.
Just in light of what Representative Love, the status update on the state, and I totally agree about the need to support and help our entertainment venues in Nashville. I would be willing to suggest increasing that amount to at least $5 million. That was my initial proposal, I think about 3 weeks ago, was $5 million to incorporate the $2 million that Councilwoman Sepulveda has recommended for those music venues, because I agree we are able to get to do our part faster than the state. And to Ms. McDaniel's point, if we start with the $5 million, with the $3 million for the support, as I suggested, and then the $2 million for entertainment music venues, and then look after in a few months and see, you know, how that support is going, and if additional support is needed, go back and look at infusing some more funding if we have it into that. So I would raise my initial motion from 3 to 5 million, which was my initial motion.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to see that things are trending that direction. That's kind of my sentiment as well. I've listened a lot. I have a couple of questions, but I like the collaborative nature of all that are here and all that are in attendance. It was nice to read through the proposals and hear so many of you mention each other. I think that's just great, especially that's going to be what our business community needs. One proposal that was submitted to us, and there is not a representative here, was from MIMS Connect and a young lady named Netta Dobbins. So I just wanted to ask, just out of those who are here and are present, are you all familiar with her or her work? Have you done any work with her? As I read through a lot of these, there are several mentions of contractors and resources that will be utilized that may be not necessarily directly within the organization, but of course within the network of an organization. And so as we have another proposal in front of us as a committee, I'd just like to ask of those who are present here if they've worked with her before. And I'm not sure if you all are privy to her presentation, but if you're privy to her work, would you let us know and kind of weigh in on that? That would be helpful to us as a committee. MIMS Connect, MIMS Connect, and the name of the young lady is Netta Dobbins, Dobbins.
Ashley, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
I can. I was going to let Angela talk. She got
Oh, no, I was just saying I'm not familiar with the organization or the young lady.
And I agree, neither are we at Pathway. I'd like to say that we...
Okay.
We're not familiar either.
Did we hear, was there a yes from the East? So there's collective no's. Okay. Thank you for that. Before I turn over the mic, I did have one other question, and I think I'll be able to be short now because a lot of this was presented. But in terms of rolling out that timeline of getting everyone together, if we are approving funds next week and then we're talking about potentially having another 2 weeks in between it, I mean, just thinking about these businesses, I know every hour is probably extremely stressful, but thinking about as days and weeks pass, if we're able to allocate these funds, really and truly, how quickly are we able to get those out the door? So if we put out a blast that says, go to XYZ, one of you representatives here, and people are starting to make calls and reach out, how quickly can they expect to delivery of services, delivery of grant dollars? I understand there'll be an assessment process, but just highlight to us just a little bit what we're awarding dollars for and what that turnaround time will be.
So from Pathways perspective, we're already in this business for one thing, on the mezz debt and on the grant side and on the education piece. And we feel like we're fairly nimble and able to move fairly quickly. We were in receipt of a grant from a large national foundation recently to provide grant dollars to businesses across the state that are in need of immediate assistance. You're right, every hour for these businesses is critical. And so we actually got the funding last Friday, and on Tuesday we're going to allocate almost $500,000 in grant dollars, in grant awards to businesses around the state, using the infrastructure that we have currently in place. And the limited number of resources that we have available to us. They only gave us so much money, right? So I would suspect that we could mobilize these funds in a very efficient and timely manner once we actually got access to them. And working with the network of all of us in the room and working with the chamber network that Mary Jo has mentioned, I think that we can get the word out quickly, and I think the response from the community is going to be fairly strong, and I think we can react extremely fast. So.
I guess I touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but like more specifically on like what we would be doing. We could, the reason that you see it, and I like another councilwoman brought up kind of the difference in prices for our different price points and number of entrepreneurs that we could help or business owners. What you're seeing there is the beauty of scale. So for us, we are a technologically enabled human service. And by utilizing the technologies that we've had to double down on and try new since COVID has affected us and our business model, we're able to scale relatively quickly. So if you were to have, hey, Nashville Entrepreneur Center, open your doors tomorrow to anybody that's coming in, don't charge them, they need help. And we thought that 500 people were coming to us. We would need to get the message out. But other than that, I already have the person that is the front door. I have the tech that enables them. What I need to do is be able to get the other technology expanded for more capacity. I need to be able to get the other team members to make sure it's still a human service that's technologically enabled. It's not just an online class, which are great, but it's not just that. And that there's a human that's following how you're doing throughout the process. And so that, for us, turns on phase one within 1 week. The rest of it, if we have 3 months, we're good to go. The other thing we have to our advantage is about 800 volunteer experts in the business community that I can rally on in the short term and turn on within 1 week to handle stuff that I will then be able to outsource to technology and personnel. So that's how we'll be able to do it relatively quickly.
As far as the incubation center, I'm gonna be honest, it would take us 2 to 3 weeks. You know, from a marketing standpoint, we're already working on the messaging because we think each of us have a unique messaging. So it would take a week in our eyes to get, you know what I'm saying, totally ramped up, but be able to see clients within 2 weeks if we're inundated, you know, with clients. I mean, obviously, if 50 people come next week, there's no problem. We can handle that. We're accustomed to the foot traffic.
From the chamber's point of view, we have programming ongoing. And so, this week was on what are companies doing around childcare. Next, in 2 weeks, we're taking people through what do you have to do with the protections that the state has granted from frivolous liability claims. And basically, you need to follow your state and city rules, and you will not get protections if you don't. So we have programming ongoing. And then working with these partners, we'd be able to push out what they're doing. And so basically help everybody get queued up. And we could start doing that immediately.
Conexión, 8 to 10 days before the first dollars flow out the door. I mean, the programming, like many of them, is ongoing, so it's scaling it up is immediate, and then the flow out directly to businesses within. I mean, we're doing that already a little bit. We had a small grant to support 10 to 15 small businesses, but we're already have the infrastructure to do distribution in other spaces that are not business, and so we're doing it so right away.
To close is I want to just present this to the committee. I think I hear what they're saying. I think we also should recognize that what we're asking of firms and businesses to do when we're asking them to take time out of their day to get this technical assistance and to dive in, understand we're asking them to remove key personnel from their firms that are already struggling to try to maintain. And so I would also suggest when we think about reasons for increasing the funding is front-end grants, even if it's $1,000, $2,000 to these businesses that are committed to taking these programs, because they will be removing themselves from the actual tasks that bring income while they're trying to survive. And so I think that's a really important thing to do and think about on the front end.
I had a question for Council Ladies Gamble and Johnston. Of y'all's two proposals, can you tell me how much would be allocated to direct financial assistance, I guess in the form of grants or loans? Because the more we talk about this, I think about it, things like one thing businesses that are struggling to keep the lights on and keep their doors open, what they need is money and assistance, and they need it quickly. So I was just curious about that.
So for me, with the different proposals that have come through, so for example, with Pathway, they're asking for $200,000 in basically infrastructure, so that would go to that, and then whatever else we decide to allocate would go directly to them. I think the Incubation Center had, the vast majority of it, 1.2 is for, you were giving just training, correct? Not grant or loan type stuff.
So Councilman Gamble, suggested out of the 1.2 million that I give direct assistance as well as a grant.
Okay, so great question then. Okay, so management and technical assessment, 1.2, marketing and outreach, 22 grand, and the administrative fee of 60 grand. So you're saying out of the 1.2 at the top, the management and technical assessment, that would be direct money going to businesses, or a portion of it would be?
A portion of it would be.
Okay,
more
so
than half. That's
how
what she suggested. What Councilman Gamble was suggesting, that I reduce the amount of technical assistance as far as the people I can serve, and do roughly half and half. $600 and some thousand would be management technical assistance, and another $600,000 for direct assistance in, we'll say, cash.
Are you equipped to distribute dollars?
Yes, we have our own revolving loan fund, because a lot of our clients don't have access to capital, and our program is not based up on credit, and we've been doing that for over 20 years. Now, it's not as robust as Pathways, but we do loans.
Is it all loans or some grant or combination?
It's a combination, because some of ours is, we would call sponsorships, where individuals have given dollars for sponsors.
Okay. So in my opinion, and this is just me, because I think that your bread and butter is your technical your training and hands-on work with people, and not necessarily loans and grants, even though I know that's what you do, but obviously Pathways, that's all they do. I would say to reduce that 1.2 to something more reasonable, not that it's not reasonable, it's not the right way to say it, but something that's maybe more manageable, that I don't think that you can serve 600 to 800 businesses quickly, or can you?
Yes, we have 13 consultants, because most of our capacity building is done with consultants anyway. That's why the first phase is we're doing an assessment, and then we're helping hold them accountable, and then we assign them based upon the funding that we receive from here, and accounting to work with them, or getting their QuickBooks in order, or getting them set up. meeting where they are in the digital space and helping them get in the website if they don't have a website.
Right.
So yes, we could scale.
Okay. Okay, so we are at 1:15. So in the interest of wanting to move something forward, especially this emergency type nature, I agree with Council Lady Sepulveda, so I would like to move.
Wait, just a second. Can we finish answering his question?
Oh, sorry.
Because Gamble didn't get a chance to answer.
Oh, I'm sorry,
hers.
sorry.
No, you're okay.
Okay, so to Mr. Henley's point, and I think I took the liberty of kind of rearranging NBIC's proposal because I think her initial proposal was for classes, technical support, and that's where the 600 people came in. So I'm suggesting that they not focus on classes because I think EC does that and they do a great job at that. And so I'm suggesting that that remain with them and that NBIC focus more on the one-on-one technical support and direct grants to those businesses because they also need grant support. So out of the $1.2 million or $1.3 million, I think it's kind of going back and forth because they propose 1.3, half and half. I would say if she can serve 150 to 200 people, 200 businesses with technical support and that same amount with grants. And it may be that those businesses get both. Now, these technical support services are grants as well. So I'm calling them technical support grants. So a business may get a technical support grant. And actually, I mean, I think it would be favorable to have the business that gets these direct grants also get that technical support grant. So I would say half and half on that. And then the other question was with Pathway, also being an administrator of direct grants, I'm suggesting, initially I suggested the 1.2 million for direct grants. If we add the additional 2 million for the entertainment and music venue industry, then we're saying $3 million for direct grants. I don't think, I know they also specialize in loans, but these businesses have been struggling through this entire pandemic. Some of them have gotten relief from the state, very minimal relief from the state, but they were not required to pay that back. So I don't think we should penalize them for having to struggle longer by making them pay them back. So I'm suggesting grants, not loans, like what the state is administering. Not to mention that I think these dollars are to be designated not to come back to us because whatever comes back to us has to go back to the federal government. So to answer your question, Mr. Henley, I would say that Pathway Lending, $3 million, Connexion, $200,000, which they suggested they would administer about 50 business grants, direct grants, and about 75 service grants. And then NBIC, 1.2, we'll go back to 1.3 million to administer half direct service grants, direct grants, and then half service grants. And to go back, I just want to make one other point. I think it was stated about the number of people that Councilwoman Johnston suggested, the 600 people. I think in NBIC's initial proposal, they were saying 600 to 800, but that included classes, webinars, not so much direct service. I think when we're talking about quantity versus quality, when we're talking about direct one-on-one helping somebody get their accounting in order, get their website to do e-commerce, we're talking about more direct service, so we're going to have less people being served. So I'm looking at the 150 to 200 in that space.
Can I read what I have for the 5 million and see? Would that be helpful? And there's been a little bit, so I may not be exactly right, but the Chamber's request was 100,000 and Connexion's request was 200,000. If you add Nashville Entrepreneur Center at the 900,000, NBIC at 600, and Pathway at 200, that is essentially $2 million. I'd love for somebody to check my math, but I've got 200, 600, and 200. So that's 1 million. 900 and 100, 2 million. And then the $3 million in a combination of grants and loans, which includes our music and arts.
Chamber, starting with the chamber.
The chamber asked for 100 and Connexion asked for 200. Add to that Nashville Entrepreneur Center for 900, NBIC for 600, Pathway for 200. That is all somewhat infrastructure. I think Connexion indicated there would be some small grants in that amount. So they'd use 150 of it in grants. So that's that's great. That's kind of bonus. But that 2 million was kind of technical service. It was going to be how to pivot,
Infrastructure
financial.
or support.
Yes, support. I don't mean just infrastructure in hiring more consultants, because those consultants are going to teach, the accounting that they need, how to apply for more funds, marketing, technology support, all of the different technical guidance and support to make sure that these businesses are strong in addition to funding. So that's the 2 million. And then the 3 million is the collective pot for grants and loans. And that includes the additional amount that we put in to be specific to music and arts. The 3 million total?
Of the 3 million total, how much is dedicated to?
I heard a 1 million and a 2 million. I didn't know if we were looking at just the Music Venue Alliance that we heard from. Their request was $1 million, so I didn't know if we were going over that for others. So I'll let Councilwoman Spaholdova speak to that.
There are other independent music venues that are not part of the alliance.
Correct.
So it would be all.
Yeah, so I was going to move, because this is so complicated and this, but what I do want to get on the floor for Tuesday is an emergency $2 million to go directly to Pathways for these businesses that are next month looking at having to close their doors. So can I make that motion just to start it off, and then we can continue the conversation today as far as like what chamber gets and Connexion and all that.
Trying to do it all in one.
Are we trying to do it all at once?
The motion is a $5 million.
I thought we were doing it separate.
Before we make a motion, I think Edward had a question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say one, and this is just my opinion, I think they should be separate. And reason being, my suggestion is that when we were talking about these music venues, picking up from where I left off last time, or just live event venues, picking up from where I left off last time, I believe it would be important to, one, tie their funding as quickly as you get it out the door as possible, but tie it to them making preparations for safe reopenings, right? Not just here's money, open or stay open, but tie it to preparations for safe reopenings. And I believe that one way to track and monitor who receives those funds will be to use the health department, right, to do inspections, to actually make sure that these organizations that have been forced to be closed for these past few months haven't had the same opportunity or requirements of restaurants to install and instill and train their employees for that. So I think that should be something that comes along with it. I don't think it should delay money by any means, but I think it should be a requirement. And I think that should happen under separate resolution.
So I would renew my motion for $2 million emergency funding to go to Pathways for specifically those businesses that have been shut down the longest, been affected the longest, the most, and that are looking at extinction quickly, very, very soon.
And are you recommending grants, loans, or combination?
Grants.
Okay.
So, okay, so your reasoning for combining or separating them is so that we can tie different, I guess, criteria to those particular business entities as opposed to the other small, micro, and minority and women-owned businesses. Okay. And then my other question was, Mary Jo, in that outline that you just described for the $2 million, so with are those all service? Those are all the service grants in the $2 million, not any direct grants. Is that right?
Other than Connexion providing the 150 of their 200 would be grants. And you all may want to play with that number if you're going to do 2 million to the emergency grants, because that would only leave 1 million. I thought you were doing the 1 million that the venues had asked. So.
Okay, so we'll have the separate motion that I made for 3 million for the small businesses, and then another resolution for 2 million for music and entertainment venues. Is that what I'm?
Yes, I think it keeps it separate and it makes it cleaner and has a specific distinction. Other cities have done it this way as well. You know, tying it into Metro Health, I was reading the article saying that, you know, even if they could open up safely for a couple of people, it wouldn't mean that they could have entertainers come and actually be willing to play. And so since they don't have options, I think it's better to keep it separate so they are not applying with other businesses. We also have the issue that whenever it comes to arts always ends up being not viable enough.
Arts funding, obviously I'm supportive of our venues, but there's a lot to arts beyond independent venues, which seem to be the ones that we're picking as the winners here. And I just kind of want to know, you know, what is our overall plan and who all is going to be eligible for this emergency funding? Because you have a lot of arts nonprofits that are, you know, they've lost all of their performers, they've lost songwriters. You got a lot of artists that are struggling in addition to venues, a lot of nonprofits. Are we thinking that this is going to help any of them, or are we just saying right now we're going to have venues be eligible for this fund?
I mean, that's a great point. I know that some people can apply for the rent relief, utility relief, mortgage relief, all of that. A lot of artists would be eligible for that. I do think that we can look at the possibility of that. The symphony was struggling a little. Do we want to make it open to them as well? It's up to the body. I'm in agreement that we should open it up to more a wider audience. I do agree.
And one other clarifying point, I know that we're talking about separating the resolutions, but are we talking about doing both of the resolutions at this next meeting? Because this sense of trying to reach a lot of businesses quickly with this support, the thought that we would just sort of not make that urgent seems to me, we're leaving them just sort of not having an answer for a while.
I had a question I wanted to ask too. The $2 million that we're thinking about for arts and entertainment, I know we're talking a lot about scope. I mean, is it the intent of the committee that includes the zoo?
The what?
The zoo, the Nashville Zoo.
Well, that was my question about the nonprofit. When you're talking about the arts and the nonprofit space, is that going to be considered separate? Are we not, to Sarah's point, to her point about who we're including in that $2 million entertainment venue? I think we'll have to narrow that down. Or are we just suggesting just entertainment, music venues for that $2 million?
I mean, it's up to the body. I would think so. The zoo has a $5 million loss. I don't know if that needs to be addressed on a separate date. It doesn't, I don't think it necessarily fits that category. I mean, theirs is a little bit different in which it's the maintenance of animals. They've lost a lot of employees and they're cutting back on veterinary procedures.
I'm good with just focusing, I guess, on that immediate need for music and entertainment venues for that $2 million and then coming back and looking at how we might address nonprofit if the state doesn't move quicker with their nonprofit dollars.
I mean, just performing arts really is a way to characterize what we're talking about, because that can pick up the nonprofits that offer them, and it can pick up the venues that host them, and it can pick up other organizations that might represent the artists themselves.
And one other point of clarification, I'm hearing the $2 million emergency grants to performing arts organizations. One of the things that we had talked about a little bit last week was that specifically with the Venue Alliance, there were, I believe, 14 included in that. But there are some that are not in that alliance. Are we saying that each would individually apply?
Yes.
So while they have a great strength in their alliance, we would actually say, you all will individually apply as
Yes.
your own organization to
Yes.
Pathway?
Yes.
Okay, so that way then there's not a, they had a nonprofit fund that they had created, and
Right.
I don't hear us going that route. I just want to clarify.
No.
And I think they created the alliance also to try and help each other out in different ways, so I don't think it's going to interfere in whatever they have.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page.
Yeah, and actually, they are on the same page too. As
Okay.
far as applying individually, they prefer it that way. To your point, that's exactly why they came together, is like strength in numbers, let's fight for each other type thing. But applying individually is totally fine, so.
So trying to move us along, if we're going to try to get to two resolutions.
Clarify.
$2 million, and then I'm sorry, I never properly introduced Quan. We have a different legal aid here
was gonna say,
today.
Alex looks
This
so
is
different
not
today.
Alex, but please keep us in line as we are mostly rookies in resolution and legislation in this room. And that I'm hearing the $2 million emergency grants as fast as we can contractually get the funds to Pathway. They will, as quickly as possible, administer grants to performing arts organizations. What is knowing that $2 million is not going to make every venue, every organization whole, what is it that we all want to set as criteria from how many months of operations versus a cap versus et cetera?
Sean?
Just going back to, from point of clarification on the original music venues, the 14, they were asking for roughly $115,000 each. That would take them out 6 months or 5.5 months. As Representative Love said, we need to get them something for a month or 2 months to get them to the point where the state ideally can step in. So do we cap each ask then? We're just using them as the model, even though there's a lot more than those, at $50,000 each, just to get them a month or 2 months down the road. And then obviously we can end up servicing close to 40 different organizations. Is that the intent? Because I think we got to make it known to them that this is short-term gap. It's not to take care of the overall ask. Ideally, that'll be filled in by the state, and then if it isn't, we can revisit it. So we got to make that clear too, I think.
So my thought process was to, the whole CARES Act thing right now is through December 30th. And so each business, my business may take X number of dollars to get me through, and hers may be much less, much more, So my thought was a limit, grants up to $100,000. Not everybody's going to need that. Some are going to need $15,000. Some are going to need whatever. And I did say funds can be used to reimburse the costs of business interruption caused by required closures. Funds can be used for business expenses such as, but not limited to, mortgage, rent, utility bills for the physical location of your and other costs for COVID-related losses, depending on the nature of your business. Again, not trying to make them whole, trying to keep their doors open. And there's other, they could have applied for food support. There's unemployment that people are on. I'm not trying to replace your payroll. I'm trying to keep your doors open. And so it's the bare minimum. What is going to keep your business alive so that when we come out on the other side of this, people have a place to go back to work? And so, but I do think it needs to be up to $100,000. Specifically, exit in is $20,000 a month, just his base stuff. So I don't want to give too little. At that point, it's a waste of money. So that's why I would say a cap of $100,000, and then obviously Pathway would be tasked with figuring out what are your expenses, what is your true need.
Point of clarification, Mary Jo, when you mentioned the $2 million or the $3 million resolution, so you stated, and correct me if I'm wrong, was it 100,000 for Nashville Chamber, 200,000 for Connexion Americas, 900,000 EC, 600,000 NBIC, and then there was another 200,000, and I didn't get.
Pathway.
Okay, that's for direct service, that $2 million for direct service?
Yeah, to provide the technical service.
And then, or technical service, and then another $1 million of the $3 million designated for direct grants that would be administered by pathway. Is that right?
Yes. You all adjust that, though. That was not your original, because I had $1 million difference in what I thought y'all were asking for the music venues.
Okay, well, this is aside. I'm just, the 3 million for the small businesses, micro, small, and minority and women-owned. So of that, the 2 million is for direct or technical assistance grants, and then 1 million direct grants that Pathway would administer.
Yes, but I don't think that aligns with what you had originally suggested, so you may want to adjust that.
Okay, well, I was
going
guess
back to
that's
the combined.
point of order. Okay, so when we separate it, if we have the 3 million there, which is fine, the 1 million for direct grants for those specific small business groups that we identified, separate from the $2 million resolution for entertainment performance venues.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just trying to make sure of what the 2 million, what those designations are for technical assistance and service, and then 1 million for direct grants. And there'll be a separate criteria when we were going back to criteria, and we can discuss this further. I don't know if we have time today, but I'd be happy to work with you on that as far as the criteria of small business categories, eligibility as it relates to metro guidelines, and then also, and I think we went back and forth on the PPP and EIDL grant, whether they received a grant or not, or if they received it, if it was less than $1,000, because of that $1 million for these small business, micro business, and minority-owned businesses, because we're talking about small business. If we're talking about small business valued at $1 million or less with fewer than 20 employees, micro business is valued at $250,000 or less with five or fewer employees, then we're not talking about $100,000 grants. We're talking about somewhere between, I don't know, $2,500, $5,000 grants. We talked about an average grant that MBIC administers now of $3,700.
Right.
So,
Do we want to take these one at a time? So that, because we were talking about the 2 million.
oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
That might just.
Okay.
Yeah, so one potato, two potatoes. So the 2 million for emergency is grants for the performing arts. And to your point, saying $100,000, I'm not saying everybody gets $100,000. I'm saying up to $100,000. And maybe that number needs to be larger. I
think it might be helpful, and Pathway, you may want to jump in. I don't want to put words in your mouth. That if there's also a certain amount of operating, because I think you could end up serving 20. They could all apply for and get 100,000.
Wait.
Term. This wasn't the full 4 months or 5 months. This is divide them a month or two, if I understood you correctly. So it wasn't the entire 2 million, that's all there is. It's $2 million to get them through a month or 2 months until we evaluate the state timing and the pool of money. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that was my point, is that if we can just give them something now, we have things at the state that are in progress, specifically around the nonprofit sector. And it's moving, but it's slow moving. But I think if we get them something now, maybe a cap of 50,000, like you said, which matches, I think, the cap that Pathway was looking for businesses, that may serve more. And it's in the same vein, I think, of what we did with the rent philosophically. We said with rent and mortgage was, we could put more, we could have put 20 million in, but we also said we know there are other programs coming down the line. We want to make sure we put something in place right now to say this we want to do right now as a stopgap measure in the hopes that as we get into October, this $10 million would help some folks with rent and eviction, as we saw, also accessing MDHA and THDA's pools for rent mitigation and mortgage mitigation. And so I view it in the same way philosophically that we're saying to live music venues and artists, all right, here we are putting an opportunity in front of you to get you through the next month or so, because as the state came back and did another evaluation of businesses, as you saw, we added caterers to the list of people who could receive help, because we also are trying to evaluate what we're doing across the state. And so I anticipate as we have programs coming out there'll be more help for even tourism and live entertainment, but this needs to be done now. And I think that lower threshold allows us to serve more, because the last thing we want to do is have, to your point, 20 folks apply for 100,000, thinking that they needed to get them through December. And we're saying that Metro's piece is going to get you through the next couple of months, and then the state will kick in later on.
So do we want to say 2 months up to 50 or 3 months up to 50? Or, I mean, is there some, and I'm going to actually, Pathway, what would be a typical criteria? Because they're going to ask for the guidelines. We can't, so.
And so, you know, this is art and science, and a lot of art and a little bit of math. But typically, what we've done previously when we have engaged in this sort of thing is we, you know, sit down with the company and we take a look at what their trailing financials look like from an operating perspective and say it's either 60 days of operating expense or 30 days of operating expense or 90 days of operating expense, and we base an award amount on that calculation. So there's a little bit of math behind it. It's just not everybody applies for 100 grand. You know, you've got to have some benchmark in order to be able to establish the amount that the business actually needs. Obviously, we will defer to the body and try to implement, you know, their wishes, understanding the need that is out there. But I do think we ought to take a look at calculating it on some, and it's typically trailing because, you know, nobody's really been in business for the last 6 months. So we typically looked at what was going on in 2019, took an average monthly of that operating expense, and then it was either a 30, 60, or 90-day award based upon their need.
But in that case, it would include full payroll, correct?
It did include payroll.
And I think what Councilmember Johnston was saying, we would actually want to look at the bare minimum to keep the door open.
Which is, we
It's
can do
probably
that too.
your utilities,
like
your
I said,
rent, you know.
It's a math problem.
Yeah, you're exploding the need if you start talking about payroll and all that. And we do have unemployment benefits, and there are other services for that. So this literally is just to stop the bleeding. One thing that gives me pause, and I understand, let's say it's 2 months. We're trying to just get you something right now to his point. I'm just getting a text that $50,000 handles cannery for less than a month. That's how much their operating expenses are, just their operating expenses. So that's my fear, is that we're leaving someone out, because there are small venues, and then there's the bigger venues that they're still less than $5 million in annual revenue. One thing, as far as specifically cannery, is that they have 3 leases, but they're all the same company. So how does, I mean, that would be a question for you. Could you, because then at that point, they can apply for 3, you know what I mean, for each one of the leases that they have? I don't know how that works.
I would suspect we would look at it on a consolidated basis if it's one company with 3 leases.
Right. So at that point, this would not, I mean, $50,000 doesn't even get them, like he's saying, a month. So do we, I don't know, do we do it on time? I mean, everybody's got such different needs. I want to make sure that we're able to help everyone, and not make the criteria such that people are left out because of, you know, for whatever reason. So
I do want to ask this question. When we say operating expenses, is it that keeps them open for a month pre-COVID or in COVID?
Period. We're talking rent and utilities.
In COVID, I think is.
Yeah, because.
In COVID.
The reason I asked the question, because if they're not open,
Yeah, utilities are
then
less.
utilities, you know, what are we talking about? I understand the rent piece, but the reality is, and I use Lee Chapel for an example. Our utilities are down because we're only there 2 days out the week for our Meals on Wheels program.
Sure.
But we're not there for Sunday service. We're not, and I know it's a different thing, but I also notice that our utilities are down because we're just not running the air conditioner as we would. The toilets aren't being flushed as they would. And so our utilities are down because we're not in the physical building. And so that's why when I ask the question, when they say operating expense, is that pre-COVID operating expense or right now?
I would say right now, because we're trying to help them right now.
No, I'm saying, what are they saying the operating expenses are? Is it $50,000 a month right now? Because if it's $50,000 now, that helps us understand that even closed is costing $50,000. But if it was $50,000 before COVID came, that's a whole different conversation.
Agreed. And I don't know the answer to that question. So I don't know.
What if we added months to it? So it's $100,000 or 2 months of operating, or some period of a window where small venues, as you said, there's a big range in them. But is that our intent, to buy 2 months, and then we can evaluate what the state can do, and if they can't do anything, we can go back and do it. So if you go $100,000, but capped at 2 months operating. So for small, it might be $17,000.
Right.
For a little bit larger, it might be $90,000.
Right.
For the full 100.
Right. Yeah, I think it's reasonable if we're talking emergency right now, understanding that later on we're going to probably do something else and we need to. I would say 100,000 makes sense as a cap, but also 2 months of right now operating expenses to keep those doors open. And this is bare minimum, keep the doors open for 2 more months. And then it buys us some time to really figure out, what else we can do. And so just.
All right. I feel like we need to make the official motion and.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for that, but I'm just trying to figure out, as we talk about, is keep open, paying employees who aren't working, but just to keep, as we said, the building open so that when we do come out, they have a place to go to. And again, that's a whole different conversation, because if the building has been deemed to be closed because of potential spread by COVID, that then qualifies the employee for unemployment insurance, which then is a whole other conversation, because now we're saying there's a pathway for your employees to have income come. It may not be what they were making, but they're employed. And so again, that's why I say operating expenses to stay open. Is it to keep the rent paid, keep the lights on?
Insurance.
So you can come back in November and operate, or is that operating expenses paying everybody so they don't go some other place?
Is literally just operating expenses, meaning rent, keeping the lights on, keeping the doors open to the point that there's some place for these people to come back to, but not paying payroll. And he did just tell me $50,000 is current cost a month for cannery.
I think some of the venues, who was here from Exit In the other day, told us that they are down to the bare minimum of employees already. Mm-hmm. And so most of those employees are already off payroll.
Yeah. So I would renew my motion for $2 million in emergency funding to go to Pathways, with the caveat that we limit it to $100,000 or 2 months of operating expenses, understanding that it is the bare minimum to keep the doors open, not trying to make you whole, just trying to, so rent, utilities, insurance, your fixed expenses. I get a second?
To performing arts.
To performing arts, yes. Thank you, Mary Jo.
Did you get that?
Second.
The only thing I was going to ask, do you want to specifically exclude payroll as a part of the resolution, or do you think it's sufficiently captured with what you've said?
But that was going to be my point, because again, we're talking about different types of organizations. If I own and operate a small organization, I've been inversely impacted greater by just being unable to carry payroll. And if we're talking about distributing funds to those that need it most, if you allow somebody who has had more reserves, or just typically is just a more wealthy organization, they may be down to 5 people and think that's their minimum because they can afford it. So I feel like payroll probably needs to be excluded if you're trying to make it apples to apples as possible. When you say fixed cost, payroll is not considered a fixed cost. It's more items that are not considered payroll and are tied to the building and or some type of infrastructure or telecommunications, web services, things like that.
Yeah.
I would let the wordsmithing be done by those who do it best, but I just feel like that would be my opinion.
Yeah, if the committee feels better about specifically excluding that with specific language, removing payroll, I'm happy to do that.
And I would like to press that. I would also support it, but I do think we should put in there that those organizations that receive these funds, if they've been closed for months, they need to prepare to reopen. They need to have some type of commitment to going through an assessment and preparing themselves to reopen. If our goal is to truly mitigate COVID's impact, we need to take that into consideration.
Okay. Any other? So I think we have the $2 million, 2 pathways for performing arts organizations to cover 2 months of bare minimum operating expenditures, excluding payroll, not to exceed 100,000. I think that was your motion.
Just clarification, I thought it was a cap of 100,000 or 2 months operating. So not, yeah.
Is that different than what I said?
Yes.
2 months not to exceed 100? 2 months not to exceed 100. That's what I said. Okay.
No. That limits it to 100,000. It's 100,000 or 2 months operating expenses, correct? That's what we were talking about?
You're saying 100,000 is not the cap?
I think the way that we were talking about it, it said 100,000 or 2 months operating expenses if it's above 100,000. Am I mistaken in that's what we came to
Yeah,
the
I think the point that we're missing is we're trying to not allow 1 or 2 or a handful, I should say, of organizations to dominate the funds. And so if we say 2 months or 100,000, you may leave them out by not giving them enough, but you say, hey, the most you can apply for because you're so large is 2 months. If you're a smaller organization and you're like, I need $100,000 to get through the next 4 months, and you have a viable case, I think that's more in line with what we're saying. Because if you're giving them the opportunity to present that case, I think Pathway, who we're going to enable, is going to be making that determination. Or are you just saying 2 months period and nothing else? Because if that's the case, you can take a dollar cap off.
Well, I don't know that well, you're right. You could take that $100,000 cap off if all we're talking about, I mean, the whole point of this is that it's emergency. Right now, we're just trying to buy you a little bit of time, not necessarily through the end of the year. We're talking about 2 months. So yeah, at that point,
I think you still need the cap because if somebody has $75,000 in bare minimum operating expenses, then
Yes,
they'd get
okay.
150.
And so that was my original thought was 2 months with a cap of $100,000.
Yep.
Aim to do this on emergency funding and then have folks get there late and not get anything because a handful that had larger budgets got the whole amount.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I also I really want to work on the rest of this with NBIC and Connexion and Entrepreneur Center and Chamber and really do this, expeditiously as well. But to Council Lady Sepulveda's point, we've got people that are literally going to be closing like next month. So that's why it's like, let's do this first. Let's get this out the door with the person that can get it out the fastest. We're talking about putting a Band-Aid on. And then come back to this. And I think we're pretty close, actually, with the rest of it. We really are.
No, I just want to make so we're capping the amount, and do we need to add the language 2 months or $100,000, whichever amount is lower? Mm-hmm. Is that that language helps us? Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to add that our restaurants and retail are also suffering and are about to close if they haven't already. And so I think doing these at the same time would be most beneficial. And so I don't know if we could get back to the $3 million for the small businesses.
Can we vote on the first one?
Okay, let's vote on this one, okay.
Yeah, and just one further point. I think we have the full intention. We fully intend to bring both resolutions up on Tuesday to be voted on.
Okay, so do you want to repeat the motion? I want to make sure this is all official.
So I will renew my motion to allocate $2 million in emergency funding to Pathways for the performing arts for the purpose of operating expenses for 2 months with a cap of $100,000, whichever one is the lower, right? Okay.
Councilmember Sepulveda said second.
To the earlier point about pre-COVID operating expenses or budgeted operating expenses,
Current.
we want current operating expenses.
Current operating expenses.
In the resolution.
Yes.
Okay, so we've had a motion made, we've had it properly seconded. Can we get a vote from all of our committee by raise of hand? I see all 9 hands, so therefore we will submit that resolution. Thank you. All right. We want to bring up the $3 million resolution. Gina, did you have? Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's on the resolution. I think we ought to do the same thing for small businesses that we did for performing arts. So, I mean, I'd move to amend it to add $1 million to, I guess, yeah. Yeah, it's one, add another to make it 2 for small businesses.
Hold on.
Well, because my understanding is it was $3 million in direct assistance, 2 for performing arts, 1 for small business, $1 million for small businesses. I would amend to say $2 million for small businesses to match what we did for performing arts. Yes, I'm moving to amend Council Lady Gamble's motion, which I'm not even sure if your motion's on the
Yeah,
floor.
well, I don't think I was able to make
I'll let
it
you know.
yet. I've been trying to wait patiently to do that. But to your point, because we're also doing $2 million in technical assistance and services, I think the $1 million in direct grants is enough, particularly since we're looking at the categories of small businesses valued at less than $1 million, less than 24 employees, and micro businesses less than 250,000, less than 5 employees. So I appreciate your amendment, but I think because we're doing both technical assistance and direct grants, I think probably the 2 to 1 million, we should probably stay with that. Does anybody else have any points on that?
Can I ask if the committee is still comfortable with the amount of infrastructure versus grants, considering your original, I feel like I may have messed that up, and I just want to clarify, because your original proposal had more in direct funds, grants or loans, because it had a combination from NBIC and Pathway.
Right, and so in your revision, you took that out and put.
Only because I thought we were adding 2 to the whole pot, and so that's why I don't want.
Oh, okay, so you were suggesting not a $3 million small business.
Yes.
You were saying $2 million.
I thought we were only putting $1 million into the venue, and that, so there was still, I thought there was still a $2 million pot, like $1 million for grants, $1 million for loans.
Out of the $2 million?
No, out of the $3 million.
For clarity, can I
we made it
request
up
that
to
we
5.
just do a new?
Pardon me?
For clarity and time, can I request that we just start a new motion? Because I
Yes.
feel like I've got scribble on my paper that goes a
Yes,
different
I don't
ways.
want to go
think we
back
should
to
just
the,
start-
because
yeah.
mine was combined. So I would like to make sure that we start from scratch and clarity.
Okay. So the motion was for $3 million for
Would you like to
small
break that
business
down
support.
for us?
So based on what you broke down, the $2 million, Mary Jo, for $100,000 for NBI, for Nashville Chamber, for infrastructure and I guess direct service, the $2 million, $100,000 for Nashville Chamber, $200,000 Pathway, $900,000 EC, $600,000 NBIC, $200,000 Connexion. That was the $2 million in infrastructure and direct service. and then $1 million for direct grant administered through Pathway.
I would change, and I don't know if we're amending or whatever, but I would change EC from 900,000. I think we can add to that later if we need to, because that's a lot of businesses. I say start, I would say start off lower at, I've got too many papers.
And what was included in that 900,000? Was that just?
That was a number of participating small businesses equal to 2,500 to 5,000. And so I think starting off maybe.
But that's more so, that's not direct one-on-one service. Was that, and I don't know, someone.
That's just your infrastructure,
Actually, they're
correct?
still here.
Hello. Yes, so that would include direct one-on-one service as well as access to group learning and events.
Okay, so let's start with doing the 375, which is half of, or no, it's not half, but it's, I mean, I'm open to it, but I think the full 900,000 is excessive right out the gate.
I was going to say, I think the point that was made by Sarah earlier is just you get greater economies of scale. I believe that's also the way that it's being presented to us here. More bang for our buck, and again, we got to get the dollars out the door. I'm not assuming that there's a definitive timeline that this will happen, but I would assume it would be happening as quickly as possible. And I feel like if you are opening your doors to that many businesses, again, we have an obligation to funnel as many businesses as we can there to make those dollars go as far as possible. I would assume, just like everyone else we're giving funds to, you or someone from the EC will be presenting to us bi-weekly the status and how many firms are being addressed. And so I think we could put similar language that we put before, that if those funds are not expended quickly enough, they can be recaptured or something like that. But I would hate to not provide funding to an organization that's been hearing the discussion with us and clearly serving the small business community. We have the opportunity for another $250,000, potentially double the impact.
I think the idea was to leave a pool for grants and loans. I think that was what I heard.
But I understand your point, and I could argue both ways. So I'm not going to fight too hard on either of those because I get it. So whatever.
Well, I think to my initial motion, and I didn't have 900,000 for EC and not my initial proposal. So if we change that amount and change the amount of participating businesses that they can support, I think we talked about. I think initially I suggested 200,000 and they said 500. But if we look at the chart that we have here, 600,000. Serving 500 to 1,000, and then put the remaining 300 back to grants and get that back to the 1.3 million for direct grants. I think that would probably serve all of our purposes, and I think that's what I'm hearing, that we'd like to put more money towards direct grants. And then and just have 600,000 for EC and 600,000 for NBIC for the technical assistance and service grants.
And of the 1.3 million, is there going to be a split between grants and loans?
I'm suggesting grants.
Here's what I like about the loan aspect of it, to his point, is that it recycles, and so it's an ongoing money source.
Are we doing loans for the business venues? Or just
No,
grants?
just no
So I'm not
grants.
sure why we're wanting to put loans on small businesses if we're not putting them on the other business.
I agree with you. I mean, I'm saying the benefit to a combination of the two. Even one business could get a grant and a loan, and these loans are like paid out over long periods of time, very, very low interest. I like the aspect that it just continues to get funneled right back into the community. But if everybody wants grants only, fine with me.
I mean, I understand your point and I agree, but I just don't understand why we're not going to do it across the board. If we're going to do, we need to be consistent, and we don't need to penalize small businesses to pay back loans if we're not doing that for other
My
businesses.
point
And we're
was,
talking about smaller loans as well, because we're talking about
Right.
smaller grants rather as
Right.
well, because we're talking about smaller businesses.
Yeah, I think the emergency funding that we're talking about with our venues is because they've lost 94 to 99% of their revenue, and so they're hurt harder. And where we've got restaurants and retail that they're open, they're hurting, God, Lord knows.
Well, if we look at the data of the Our Fair Share on the first page, it talks about businesses losing 90% of income. So I think.
So I think that would be.
Oranges and oranges.
Right, I think that would be a decision to Pathways to say, how do you make that distinction if you have if you're splitting it or whatever, do you say, okay, business A is here, you would get this in grants and this, how do you determine grants versus loans or the combination?
Again, science and art combined. So typically what we do is we look at what the organization's short-term needs are from a cash flow perspective, and then what their long-term operational growth could potentially be given the right capital stack. So, if it's a grant loan combination, we'll look at providing, X number of dollars in grants and then come in with that patient capital piece on the back end, and the mezz debt product as we described in our proposal, which would be, kind of 36 months, basically either no interest or very low interest only payments during that time. And then at the end of that 36-month period, figure out some more permanent capital structure, either they pay us off or we just amortize the loan over an additional period of time. So a lot of it is just sitting down and looking at what the pro forma looks like based on historicals. We take a very short look back and a long look forward as opposed to what a traditional financial institution would do. So a lot of it is based on the pro forma aspects of, okay, what do they need to get them through X and how do we get them to Y? And so it really, there's not a specific formula for it. And that's the other interesting thing about what we do on the lending side. We don't have a typical, confinement that we would operate under like a bank. So we've got the ability to really structure a credit facility that's going to benefit the business cash flow. So we would look at it in a much more global perspective, but, there is the potential to do that. I will say at the $1.3 million level, when we start talking about loans versus grants, we were looking at, say, $40,000 to $50,000 on the lending side per business and then $10,000 on the grant side. So there's an impact issue on number of businesses served as well as we look at the 1.3 million as opposed to the 4.5 original proposed. So I will put that on.
And I would caution us to not lean too heavily on the loan piece because of the time frame also. This loan isn't going to revolve that fast. We'll be into December 31st before we know it, and one organization will have not even started to pay back that loan. And I would hate for us to discourage just by the term loan.
Yeah.
One of the appeals of the PPP was that the loan could be forgiven. And that's why so many folks applied for it. And also the other EIDL loan, because the interest was so small, you still had time to recover. And so I think that since we're going to be philosophically again saying to everybody, whether it's the individual with rent, whether it's the live venues with opening back up, there has to be some consistency philosophically to say also to restaurants, other people, we're going to heavily lean on the loan, on the grant piece. And if you want to take out a loan, then you can, but we want to make sure that we're, I think, across the board saying the same thing consistently.
Okay. So then I would say all grant. That makes me happy. I would love to give money.
Okay.
I wish I had money to give.
Councilmember Gamble, would
Yes,
you
ma'am.
repeat the criteria? Because you did, I believe you had small businesses, 1 million or less.
Yes.
Employees, 20 or less.
Yes. And then the micro businesses, assets, 250.
They'll all be less. So
Okay,
everything would
okay,
fall,
okay, so,
everything
okay,
would fall
that's
under. So I
fine.
think we're just
Okay.
setting the cap.
Okay.
So do you want me to repeat what I think we
Yes,
have?
yes, that's
Okay.
fine.
So for a total of 3 million, it would be 100,000 to the chamber, 200 to Conexión, 600 to NBIC, 200 to Pathway, 600 to Nashville Entrepreneur Center, which leaves 1.3 million of grant funds, maximum $10,000 to be administered by Pathway. This would be eligible for small businesses under $1 million in revenue and less than 20 employees.
Do we also want to give priority to those businesses that did not receive PPP?
I would strongly advise against that just because you don't have the list to prove.
Gotcha.
Especially with this size.
Sure. Yep.
Are there any other criteria that we'd be missing?
I think we wanted to address the citations for violating safety orders.
The clerk has a list of businesses that have been issued. I requested it earlier today, so we would be able to pull that. So it would just be it's not written warnings, it's just the ones that have actually been called to environmental court.
And I think the other issue, and I think this was in Councilmember Gamble's comments, are we trying to focus on businesses that have been in existence for a minimum period of time or have a minimum level of sales? Because otherwise we could have someone that just sort of
Yes. Yes.
starting a business or something.
I suggested using the eligibility guidelines from Metro small business that are already in place. Legal business entities, been in business for a minimum of 1 year, performing independently and satisfactorily, and achieving a minimum of $35,000 in sales income during the previous tax year.
My worry with that is that one of the things that prevented some small businesses from receiving PPP was the fact that they were not in operation before December 31st, 2019. And so there were a lot of businesses that started, this year that I'm a little worried about that.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say be in business as of, as of February 29th, 2020.
From Pathway, is there, see, the problem I see in that is not being able to justify that it was a viable business prior to COVID.
Yeah,
and so
right. I get that too.
Would you have any documentation or something to classify that business?
Best practice?
We have typically looked at the one-year benchmark because that seems to be standard across the board, particularly from a public sector perspective in terms of policy. And then the other, just a matter of course, I guess, is, we want to make sure that we're contributing to viable business entities when we do this. So it's very difficult to gauge the viability of a business when they've only got 90 days worth of true financials. So, but obviously it's at the pleasure of the body, but just from our perspective, we're really trying to help businesses that are in business continue to be in business.
I would just suggest for the grants that we maintain the one-year eligibility, and then maybe for the direct service grants or the technical assistance grants, maybe get more flexibility there where we're looking at businesses established by January 1 of this year, kind of thing, or February.
Sure. You're nodding your head. Do you have a date that you feel like is something if you're going to be looked at differently as far as how you're allocating that you think is fair?
I'm just going to give you 2 quick examples. It's a restaurant, well, not a restaurant, well, it's a juice bar that opened on Church Street, like literally right before we shut down. So do we consider them not a viable business? They're still opening and at 50%. So from a technical assistance, I think they should qualify. And then last time I was here, remember I spoke of the grocery store that's opened up in Farmers Market. Again, that's not really, per se their fault, because they started to build out pre, 2019, but there wouldn't be any revenue coming in. So I think it's some of the case-by-case basis, and just making sure when we report back, we have a justification if we have to, tell somebody no.
Yeah. So is February 29th, 2020 a reasonable date for that? Because we shut down end of March?
It was end of March.
Right.
Shutdown was March 16th.
March 16th? Was it March 16th?
Well, that was the emergency declaration order.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I would say
but
March.
And they would at least need a couple of months of operating financials to gauge. Well, I would say for the technical assistance, I think they should qualify.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes,
right.
Definitely for the technical assistance, and to your point, in that technical assistance, helping them reimagine their business, include e-commerce for that kind of thing. So yeah, I agree. So the date is, that's fine.
Okay,
February
and then when
29th.
you say a year, are we saying a year from today or a year from?
12 months of continuous business. So whenever they started, as long as they have 12
Prior to
months of
shutdown?
continuous business.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Prior to shutdown or to today?
Well, I would say 12 months, whether it's including the shutdown or not. So if they started in March of 2019 and shut down in March of 2020, that's 12 months.
What if they started in August of 2019? They
That's
still
not
have,
12 months.
So 12 months from shutdown.
From,
What-
12 months from the
12
time-
months from now. I would say 12 months from now.
Okay, that would go
so
back.
that would be August. So from,
12
May.
months, from 12 months from the time that they apply.
okay.
Councilmember Gamble, do you want to repeat that? Do you want me to repeat back what I have?
Yeah.
I think
Make it your motion?
Councilwoman Sepulveda had a question
Oh.
first.
I don't know if it needs to be included in this resolution. I do think that we need to have something that says that we need to make sure that for all of these past resolutions, that there is a page on our Metro site so people could go there to find where they could get help.
We can just do that for you. I'll send it to Katie.
Okay, so in Councilmember Gamble's motion, I'm going to go back, that, again, it's the Chamber for 100, Conexión for 200, NBIC 600, Pathway 200, NEC 600, 1.3 million in grants. The grants are limited to businesses that have been in operation for 1 year as of their application date. A minimum of $35,000 in revenue, a maximum of $1 million in revenue. Technical service provided by the network is available to all businesses under that $1 million threshold.
And do we want to put the $10,000 grant cap?
Yes, and I didn't mention that, sorry. So that is the motion on the floor.
Compliance with safety.
In compliance with safety. With health order.
I think you said less than 20 employees too.
Yeah, do we want the 1 million cap and 20 employees? Combination or
No.
just the 1 million?
1 million is fine.
Okay. So that is the motion on the floor as amended. I have a second from Councilmember Johnston. Any other discussion?
Because it's going to look a little bit odd to have $2 million for just music venues and 1.3 for all other small businesses. But I think our rationale there is we know that there are other programs that are still in development and still haven't been, allocated yet for other small businesses. So I think we would want some language in the resolution acknowledging that we will continue to monitor the availability of funds from the state and other sources to examine the needs of small businesses in the community. So I don't want it to just look like we're picking music venues and sort of making some sort of judgment as to their importance versus other small businesses.
And also we'll have language as to the 2 million that will be for technical and sustainability grants as well.
Sorry, and along the same lines of every other thing that we've done is the biweekly reporting on kind of where we are, how quickly those funds are being dispersed, who they're being dispersed to. We'd like that information reported back to the committee.
We'll keep that kind of model from the resolutions. Any other discussion before we vote? All right, committee, all in favor of the motion as amended? Raise hands. I have all 9 hands. Thank you. Motion passes.
Can I ask for one thing, our fair share, if that could be sent to the council members, because in specific committees that we've had, I think budget or rules, I forget which one it was, they were asking for the report And I think it's going to be important going forward for them to approve any
Yeah, I
future
can speak to that.
resolutions.
They had asked if they could wait to send it to some other folks as well until they had the final copy of it. They had sent you guys the preliminary just to help you make decisions on this, but I'm happy to share that with them to ask.
Edward?
2 points before we formally adjourn. I do want to just, for the record, address that we did receive something from We Are One World Foundation. Is it maybe this doesn't need to be formal, but is it the committee's recommendation or suggestion to that organization that they are funneled to Second Harvest or United Way or someone that we've already given funding to? I just wanted to make sure we address that because there is a proposal in front of our committee.
Say that, which proposal?
We received something from We Are One World Foundation. I'm not familiar with them, but I did just want to address that we received a proposal.
The kitchen?
Yes.
Or something that you received specifically?
No, this was part of our packet as a committee.
Yes, I agree that those agencies we should direct them to United Way and Second Harvest Food Bank. I've already done that. I've received proposals from separate agencies, the Help Center that distributes food, and I've directed them to Second Harvest Food Bank to apply to be one of their distributing partners.
I just wanted to have that for the record. And then also between now and Monday, if we do our typical review of the resolution, if there is word of anybody's watching or touches or tunes in before then, if there is significant outcry, maybe a strong word, that from our business community that 1.3 is not enough, I would like to hear that before we make that final motion. My personal opinion is that it should be more, but to move it along and we got to start somewhere, I think it's fine.
Okay.
We do need to pick a time for Monday.
Yeah, we will look at Monday. We'll try to go as early as possible because we do have to have it finished by noon.
That enough
Do we want to
for you?
pick that time?
That should be fine, yes.
Kwan's like, I'm handing it back to Alex.
The resolution, I think it would be helpful to have some language in there stressing our desire for the organizations that we're asking to provide this technical assistance to cooperate and collaborate with one another, try to avoid duplication, and to try to get as much information out to the small businesses as possible. And I think we might also want to include the desire to use the various chamber organizations to enlist their support, since they have a relationship with Metro, to try to help get the word out as well, because I think we want to get just things disseminated very quickly.
Thank you. Okay. Lots of whereases. All right, thank you all so much. I appreciate almost a full extra hour of your time. We appreciate it, and we are officially adjourned. And thank you to our
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.